Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and it's good to be back. Sorry about last week. It is what it is, and life is life, and we got to deal with it. So uh, I am feeling okay. That was just a cough. So we are up to, I just want to get right back into where we're holding. We're holding on page 144, day 43. And let's get straight into it, and then we're gonna start chapter 4. Um, we actually started chapter 4. My mistake. We're up to page. We're up to page 152.
Yeah, that's right.
6. Sorry, 152, day 46. But so before we start the actual class regarding the dilemma that we have here, I actually want to mention something that I saw, and I think it's a great idea to reflect on, and there's actually two different perspectives that we could think about. So think about it for a second. You have a child, your child, your grandchild, a friend's child, and you're at the playground or you're in shul or whatever it is, and you hear the child say, "Mommy, mommy," or "Daddy, daddy, look what I'm doing. Look, I'm going down the slide. Look, I'm swinging. I'm jumping off this. I'm doing the monkey bars." Right? The child, right? The child needs and desires uh, the parents' recognition, right? The parents knowing that there's someone watching them, someone seeing what they're doing. A child needs that. Now, when the child gets bigger, right? And let's say I'll just take myself as an example, right? So let's say I'm doing something, and I can say, "Daddy, daddy, mommy, mommy, look what I'm doing! I'm giving a class." No, I don't think so. I don't think that's. I think some people will like find that a little okay. Are you still living in your parents' basement, right? Like we got to grow up. We gotta take on our own responsibility. Feel good about what we're doing. Yes, we still need recognition, but it's a different kind of recognition, right? We're not constantly looking, and we shouldn't be constantly looking to see, how other people or whatever people or be running after that desire, that need. And it's the same thing, say the commentaries, and there's two different things I want to take out of this, right? It's the same thing, say the commentaries regarding, right, our relationship with other people. When we're children, we need other people, teachers, right, parents. We need their recognition. We need their their being affirm of what we're doing, or right. Or that's why some kids, studies show that's why kids make trouble or act up. 90% of the time, probably more, 99% of the time of why a kid does mischief or gets in trouble is because they're looking for attention. It's just coming out in the wrong way. It's negative attention, right? And that's why it's so important to give positive attention, because by giving positive attention, right, we're getting rid of that need for the negative attention because they're getting that positive attention. But as we become adults, we should be able to be more satisfied, more than satisfied. We should be more have a self that we're not doing things because other people are either pressuring us or we feel we need to be part of a group or whatever or whatnot. Now, there's a plus and a minus to this, right? We're right now talking about the plus of not needing that. And that is that if there's a group of people talking Lashon Hara, right? If there's a bunch of people gossiping, or you're at a Shabbos table or at a Baruch Hashem, Kiddush has opened up, right? And hopefully as we move more forward, we'll start having programs again, right? And we'll have more interaction with people, right? Going to people for Shabbos and things like that. And that need to be part, that need to feel like I'm that negative attention, we should be past that. We should be past that. We should be like, okay, I'm gonna, no Lashon Hara for me. I'm not in this position to say anything, let's say, I'll walk away. I'll go to another conversation, right? Switch the conversation. Talk about the meatballs at the table. How are the meatballs, everyone? Right? How's the chicken? Oh my gosh, what a chicken! Right? This meat is to die for. Right? Oh my gosh, where did you get this recipe from? You don't care about recipes, right? But you're just to try to change the conversation, right? Try to I don't know, talk about how Toronto's Blue Jays still can't play in Toronto because of whatever. And who knows? Talk about sports. Talk about Israel. Talk about something else. Change the conversation, because we should be able to be strong enough that we don't need that mommy, daddy, look what I'm doing. We're past that. We're past that. That's something that we really have to think deeply inside of ourselves. Are we past that? Or are we not? And I just want to point out that there is a positive to this on a certain degree, right? This is not necessarily our class, but since I'm bringing this up right now, there is a positive of sometimes in a positive way of wanting to mimic other people. It says kina sofrim marbet Torah. The kina, the jealousy of sofrim means to say of schools or things like that. Marbet Torah, bring more Torah. Why? Because this school wants to have the best Torah teachers, and that school they want to have the best students. Right? So the more there is a desire for more good things, right? People up their game because they want to be recognized or they want to be that place. So there is a positive component to it, right? But that I call still positive recognition, right? Needing that positive attention, right? So in a positive attention, that is a healthy way of still needing. And when you're doing that, you're not saying, mommy, daddy. You are looking within yourself and saying, wow, look, that person is doing a mitzvah, good deed. You know what? I want to do a good deed. I want to do more tikkun olam. And I want to learn a little more. I want to be able to hold back my tongue. I want to be able to give a little more charity. I want to be able to do something positive, right? And that is a positive way of sort of that pressure. But I promise you, that pressure is in a whole different way. It's not trying to fit in. It's trying to be better. And that, my friends, is the litmus test for you to know if this is a positive or a negative attention that you're craving. If it's a positive, so then what the purpose of this is for you to grow, not because you necessarily want to be exactly like that person or you want to fit into that crowd. It's because you are inspired by other people doing something good, so you want to be part of that good. When it's you want to fit in, you feel bad saying something, you feel you might become an outcast, you feel that someone might say something negative about you, you feel you might get your feelings hurt, you feel this, you feel that. And I'm not saying those are not legitimate feelings, but when that is driving you be part of something or not to say something or to just follow the crowd, that is negative attention. That is negative attention. That's a litmus test to know what is positive and what's negative. So that's something to reflect on as we're getting back on the horse and getting back onto this, working on ourselves and growing and making sure that we're taking the right direction, right? I want us to reflect on our daily activities. Let's do we call it a cheshbon hanefesh, a reflection of our nefesh, of our soul. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing it because I want to become better? Am I copying other people? Am I reflecting, learning from other people, and want to be part of a certain group because that will make me a better person? Yes, being part of a certain group will help you be a better person. You hang around people that are doing good, you will start doing good. You hang around people that are driven to study, driven to be, someone earlier in the morning before I started the class made a comment of, the core group over here, right? There's a group, and you know what? I don't want to miss it. I know if I miss, someone's going to say, hey, how you doing? Hopefully you're feeling okay, whatever it is. We're part of a group over here. We want to be part of that group. We want to be growing. Not because, oh, I'm scared what people are going to say if I wasn't on today and whatever. That's a negative thing. Positive is because you're doing it, being part of that group. You want to be part of a certain synagogue. You want to be part of a certain organization. You want to be part of a group of people that are growing because you want to grow. And then the flip-flop is not because you want to be like them. You just scared people are going to say something negative about you. You feel like you're going to miss something. Scared you're going to, and that's a negative thing. So my friends, that's something to reflect on and to think about. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so today's day 46. And day 46, the case is like this. You have a class of rowdy fifth grade boys. Most of them respond when you put your foot down and call the class to order. All right, that phrase, putting your foot down. Wow, I haven't heard that in a little while. All right, putting your foot down, right, and putting the class to order. But one child is especially disruptive and impulsive. He talks too loud, interrupts too often, and jumps out of his seat for no reason. You know he's taking medicine for ADHD, but you think he just needs someone to put some fear into his heart. Today you were especially tired and he drove you crazy. Is it time to tell the principal about his behavior? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go a little off tangent, right? Because this is a very important case, right? And I'll be honest, I don't like the way they presented this, and nothing, this is a great book and I don't want to, God forbid, talk negative about this book. This book is a jewel, and we've been, powering through this book and growing through this book, right? But, when this book was written, maybe, certain things were a little different. I don't understand why the question was posed. There's some good questions that could be asked here, but I don't know why this question was posed in a way that is it time to tell the principal about his behavior? The principal should be told right away, right? That's not Lashon Hara, right? That's for Teolis, that's for the proper reason. You shouldn't let it get to a certain stage of where you're on your nerve ends and that's when you tell the principal, right? The principal there should be that relationship, just FYI for schools, right? And I'm not the expert in schools, but I have common sense and, and did a little studying into it and learning from my father and seeing from other places, right? There has to be a relationship and a connection between the principal and the teachers, right? And that being said, right, saying now is when you decide to tell the principal should have been told. The question could have been posed is, right, you're on your wit's end and blah, 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 and could you, call out the student right now or whatever, right? Or how do you deal with such a situation or, something like that. But for the cases, could you tell the principal now, right? You don't need to make it so dramatic, right, to tell the principal. That is called toelis, 100%. The principal is supposed to know what's going on for the benefit of the child. That because a principal is a lot of times, and in a good school, the principal has a 20,000 foot view of what's going on, should be over every child, right, and the whole school as a whole. And therefore, right, the Rebbe, the teacher, the Mora, right, whoever it is, right, is focused on his or her class and in focus on each child, but at the same time doesn't have, to a certain degree should have, right, but doesn't have the complete overall view of everything that's going on, right? And therefore, the principal should be able to give insight to the parent, to the teacher and say, yes, okay, so the teacher knows he's on medicine, he has ADHD, right? But to be able to give insight to the teacher of how to be able to handle it, that it doesn't get to this level, right? Into this level, right? So just to point that out, I know that's nothing to do with, it is, because we're saying that it is toelis, and I think that's really the bottom line of this question, is it called toelis or not? Right, but it shouldn't reach because you were tired or it drove you crazy that day, right? There's if this happened a couple of times, maybe once or twice, you don't have to go tell the principal because the kid could get in trouble or whatever it is, and you think you could work with. But if it's something that's constantly happening, then yes, you have to have that conversation with the principal to be able to take care of the situation. That's definitely called Toelis. Chailea asked, or Chailea made a statement, right, saying, and let me just read it, right, in the chat, and thank you for writing, Chailea. I like when people either speak up or chat. I don't like the idea of putting fear into a child, right? So Chailea, I think it's a sort of like a phrase, right? But you know, this concept, there is a concept of, and it is, a lot of people are now talking about it, that one of, and in the secular world also, but we don't have to go that, we're very comfortable with the Jewish world, right? But there is a concept that there has to be, fear is the wrong word, but there should be awe and respect, right? And that does come with a little level of fear, right? There has to be a little level of fear, right? Putting the fear of God in them is like an expression, yes, of like, wow, screaming and shouting and who knows what, right? And that, I don't think that's what they meant, right? And no, that's wrong, right? Losing your control, right? That's always wrong. But it is unfortunate that there has to be discipline. And discipline comes from the kids knowing that there's fear of getting in trouble. If there's no fear amongst the kids, right, that they will get in trouble, or they know that they say, oh, you'll tell, oh, you'll tell you, and there's no follow-up, so that there's no fear and there's no discipline, right, and there's anarchy, and you're not doing any kids any favor, because the kids at the time think, oh, this is great, we're not going to get in trouble, we can do whatever we want, right? But there's no education, there's no structure, right? There's no school, right? And there's no learning, right? And all you're doing is you're actually harming the kids. And when they get older, they're going to go through life thinking that they could get whatever they want, right? And they'll never learn the concept of discipline. They'll never learn the concept of having consequences, right? And this could be detrimental to their friendship when they get teenagers, if they get a job, right? With their spouses, right? It's a terrible thing. And yes, we shouldn't scream and shout and act like a mad person, right? But there has to be discipline. And it's unfortunate when discipline is not a priority of a school, right? This idea of the kids should feel how to do, and the kids should find their own punishment. And sorry, that's a whole load of, it's just, that is not the right way, right? King Solomon says, "Chanoch nar al pi darko." Yes, every child has to have their own way of educating, right? And you have to have a general for the whole school, and for the direction how the school decides to discipline. Yes, there has to be positive reinforcement, but at the same time, there has to be consequences. And you can have as much positive reinforcement as you want, but a child is still a child, and there has to be consequences, right, for the actions that they do. Now, you could have a certain program with a certain child. Let's say, for this example, the child has ADHD, the child's having a hard time, right? So then you could speak to the teacher and say, okay, listen, let's try to, why don't you I'll tell you, I don't mind talking about myself. You guys know that, right? I don't think I never, my days, I didn't really give out medicine. And I'm actually very grateful. Right, I'm not a component against medicine I feel if it's proper, and and it's going to really limit the kid, and they have good medicine now that they've changed, right? That it doesn't really take away the kid's energy, but it still allows him to focus, and he or she, right? But I was a active boy, right? Let's just put it that way. I was a very active boy, right? And I had, Baruch Hashem, God bless me. I understood things, right? Usually right away when the teacher explained it. And for me, one of the things that was the hardest for me at the time was when the teacher would repeat it over, right, for the third time, right? And I was just like, I was bored. I was bored because, it's just the way it was. I thank God I was able to understand, especially in Lamudei Kodesh, the Judaic studies, right? I was able to understand things almost right away, right? And I just got bored, right? So, and this is going even to high school, right? So, I would doodle, I would tap my feet. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't like stand up, on the desk, right? But I would tap my feet, I would like tap my hands, things like that. And it was disturbing to the class, but I was like bored. So I remember I had a Rebbe, and he phenomenal Rebbe, right? And I remember, he told me, he said, listen, Avi, if you understand what happened in school, listen, I'll know what the test, right? There's tests, right? Why don't you just get up quietly and take a walk around the building, right? And then come back. Take a walk around the building. Just let that energy out. Just walk around the building, come back. And the principal knew, so if he saw me walking around, I said, oh, I'm just taking my walk. He said, okay, good, right? Another one, as I was getting older, he said, why don't you bring another safer, another study book, a different commentary? And while I'm repeating it over, around it's not going to be disrespectful. I know what you're doing, and just pull that out and look at a different, try to see another explanation on the passage of the Talmud or the Chumash or whatever it is that we're learning, right? And spend your time on that. And then, when I'm ready to move on, I said, okay, we're moving on, right? And then, do that, right? So it is so important, right? Yes, chanoch na'al pi darko. You have to, each child, and it's hard, and especially with classes that are 20 kids and 30 kids and whatever it is, it's even harder, right? But it is important to make sure that they're still disciplined, and even these kids, right? Kids, they need discipline. I needed my discipline, right? I needed to get in trouble, right? I've had many times where I had to do 1,000-word, words, I will not, blah, blah, blah. And of course I got in trouble because I had a computer at home. So what I did is I typed the first line and then I copied, right? And my teacher got all upset at me. I thought I was a chevraman. I thought I was a smart aleck, right? And, so he said, no, you actually have to write it. And now it's 2,000 words, right? 2,000 lines, right? But I got a kick out of it still. I thought it was fun. All right. Everybody else in the class thought it was funny too. All right. But there still has to be discipline. There still has to be discipline. And there has to be discipline in school. There has to be discipline in the house. Right. There has to be discipline in a congregation. There has to be discipline in, right. There has to be discipline in a community, in an organization. There has to be. Otherwise, it becomes anarchy. A government has to have discipline. Right? It can be abused, but otherwise there is anarchy, right? And that's something that we all have to really all have to realize, to reflect on this idea. And even before we get to the what the discussion is, and for me, I think we already answered it. There's Toelis over here, right? But I think this is an important. I know I'm harping on this a little bit, and I know Bonnie has to leave soon. No, just kidding, Bonnie. But I think this is a very, very unfortunate thing that our society has created, where where we sort of making the kids in charge, and it's good to give them the responsibility, but kids are still kids. Kids should not be in charge of things that adults should be in charge of. You could empower them and let them lead with an adult supervision, right? You can empower them, right? And give them responsibility. But at the same time, there has to be an adult oversight to make sure that the child knows that they're not in charge, right? They're not in charge. You make monsters that way, right? They have to realize that they have to answer to someone. They have to get permission, and they have to, get whatever. But it is a leadership way. There is leadership in teaching them and giving them that opportunity to lead, but with direction. And this is something that unfortunately, right, has seeped even into our Jewish schools, right? And it's something that has to be rectified, and something that has to be thought about and realized, that we have to have that healthy balance of course, positive. I'm very into positive reinforcement and prizes. And growing up, we had, one of my rabbis, I grew up in Toronto, right? So it's a CN Towers. And one of my rabbis had a big chart on the board, right? On one of the walls, right? And he had a picture of the CN Towers, right? And each kid had a rocket ship, right? And in the CN Towers, there are different levels, right? And every day, if you asked a good question or how you behaved, right? Every day after school, he would lift the rocket ships up, right, a little bit, right? And every kid has his own rocket ship, and if it was a bad day, you would go down, right? And it was an individual incentive, but also a class incentive that if you, once you reach a certain level, right, there are different tiers, and you would get a prize. And if the whole class reached that tier, then there was a whole class prize, right? And then by the end of the year, to try to get to the top of the CN Towers, right? Of course, we have to have positive reinforcement, but at the same time, there has to be discipline. It has to be disciplined. And so I know I'm harping on this a little bit, but it's something very important that if we have the ability to influence is the wrong word, but to be part of an organization. If let's say we're on a board or we're, you know, we have the ear of other people, we have to make sure that that's happening. Right? We have to make sure, not in a dictative way, but as an educational way, and making sure that that balance is being kept in our local institutions and in whatever institution that one is affiliated with or has the ability to be part of. Okay, let's move on. And Bonnie, my father thought I was a genius, but said the teacher was 100% correct. Actually, just to add on to it, my parents said, "Are you sure this is okay?" And I said, "Teacher never said I can't use a computer. He just says 1,000 lines." So they let me go through it, and then they said, "Okay, but now you have to write 2,000, you know, with your hands." So they let me do what I did and failed and take the responsibility for it. Okay. So let's look at the quote, the Baal Shem Tov, right? A very powerful quote, right, from the Baal Shem Tov, and I think sort of looking in a very positive way. Stars appear as tiny specks in the sky, when in reality each is a mighty world. Right? I think you all are aware already. I'm a Star Trek fan, right? I see Bonnie shaking her head up and down, right? I'm a Trekkie, right? I'm a Star Trek fan, and you know, of course, I know it's all made up, but the idea, right, of these stars and these worlds, and you know, and these unbelievable, right? They're huge. They're bigger than the Earth, right? They're phenomenal. But for us, they look like tiny little things, right? Because it's thousands and millions of miles away. So too, a Jew may appear puny and insignificant when in reality he is an entire world. Think about this. Each one of us is an entire world. Even that awkward, that person, you know, that really is like, even then that person that's sitting on Malchi Yisrael or Ben Yehuda in Israel that's collecting, you know, and it looks like each one of us is an entire world. It's an entire world. Do you want to destroy a world? Do you want to be a world destroyer? Have you thought about that? You're destroying a world. You're harming a world. Baal Shem Tov's quote is so powerful. We are an entire world. So, my friends, we're an entire world. Let's think about that. Right, let's reflect on that. Okay, let's look at the next case. Next case. I actually did not have time to prepare this, so we're doing this together. Okay, so I don't even know what the case is. The case is like this. One of your students took another child's, right, catcher's mitt, right? We call it a glove, right? Without permission, and then dropped it in a puddle. Oh no. Right, so this happens a lot of times in school, right? Different kids have gloves, right? Baseball gloves, right? And you take by mistake one, or you don't have one, and the other kid's not going to mind. And what happens? Drops in a puddle. The mitt's owner jumped on the boy and started punching him and screaming, "My father's going to kill me if I wreck his mitt." According to the school rules, a child who started the fight should be suspended and his parents called. But you know for a fact that his father does indeed have a bad temper and is quick to hit his children. What should you do? So again, number one, if you know that the parent is quick to hit his child, I think you should have a conversation with the parent, right, and the principal, right, and the parent's rabbi. If it's not in an abusive way, right, so then you have to be careful with getting the authority involved, because the way they view things is a little different than the way we view things. Hitting in an abusive way is terrible, right? Hitting in any way nowadays is bad. But if a father gives a child, or a mother gives a child a little spanking here or there, that's not called abusive, right? And we have to remember that, right? But at the same time, one should not do that, right? So we have to be careful, right? Getting the authorities involved. And I'm not saying that we should never get the authorities involved, but we should first, speak to the principal, speak to the parent, speak to the rabbi, right? And then, if need be, let them contact the authorities, because they have, again, a broader picture, that they know what's, more what's going on, and to be able to deal with it, right? But the question over here is, the father or the mother, right, will take this a little out of proportion, right? We'll go a little crazy, right? So the question, I guess, is over here is, what should you do, right? Should you so I'm not sure what the question is, regarding Lashon Hara. Should you say something or not? Let's see what their answer is, because it's a good question in education, right? The question is what's the question regarding Lashon Hara, right? Like, should you say something? You shouldn't say something? Like, let's see what their answer is. Maybe we'll be able to get a better understanding. One of the conditions of Toelis is that there will be a benefit to the child in sharing the information. In a situation in which a child might be embarrassed or punished physically because of the teacher's report to the parents, the teacher has to weigh the situation and decide if the consequences are necessary for the child's growth. Right? Okay, so they're taking the concept of Toelis, right, to regarding if this is there's other situations going on over here. There's also, school policy, which is important, right? And it's not only for this child, it's for the whole school, right? And yes, you have to make sure that that the school, people won't feel that the school rules are not being followed, as we spoke about before. There has to be structure, and at the same time, you also have to look at an individual child, and you have to make that decision, right? And that's why there's something called principals, who are supposed to have, experience in this, learning this, having mentors to speak to. It's not an easy decision, right? It's not an easy decision. It's not, and I don't think it's the teacher's decision to make. The teacher should be speaking to the principal and telling him what happened. And in this situation, right, it was the kid that hit, right, shouldn't have hit, but at the same time, he hit because, he was upset of someone taking his glove. So who really started? Even though we have the policy, a lot of schools is, the kid that hit, which is not necessarily always correct, because which is another, thing, and I know I'm going on a rampage today about, education and structure, right? But a lot of times, schools, right, and people are very narrow vision, right? They just see, we have a school, no hitting. But do you know why the kid hit? Do you know who started? So the other kid that took the glove is going to get out scot-free, not going to get any punishment. And if that kid wouldn't have done anything, the kid wouldn't have lost his temper. Yes, the kid needs to take care of his temper. The kid shouldn't have hit, and I'm not saying he shouldn't get in trouble. But at the same time, how's the kid going to feel? He's the only one that's getting in trouble, but the other kid is the one that really started it, right? So there has to be that balance, right? And there has to be, it's not black and white, right? The rules have to be black and white, but to be able to exercise the rule, you have to have the freedom of that it's not black and white. And the principal has to have the knowledge, has to know what's going on, right? And that's why it's not the teacher's decision over here, right? The teacher should first speak to the principal, right? If it's a good principal, right? And have this discussion of what's the best course of action to do over here, right? And yes, that's where the discussion is because if it's gonna be detrimental to a child a different way, right? So then you're not really helping the child. But at the same time, there's also a concept of putting in that the school also has to have a structure. And we're not saying that one kid is less important than the whole school, but the school is still important for it to have that structure. Right. So how to deal with that? You know what? Thank God I'm not in that position. I'm not a principal of a school, right? But that is a very difficult question, but it's an important question. And that question has to be asked. And the principal has to reflect on that question. And it has to be aware that there is a situation going on over here that's not black and white. And it has to be in a situation that has to have a little more, as we call bina, an understanding, a depth, being able to, really dig deep and understand what's going on over here. Okay, so we'll end with this last quote. And again, thank you guys for joining us today. And I know it's more a class on education, right? Or, but it was, I think, a very important, and, we learned some very important things also about how to refrain from Lashon Hara, some important tips and new views. And we'll end with this very powerful quote, right? The Pal Yotzer, and he says like this: if your words will be negative, then seal the gates made by Hashem, the teeth and the lips, and do not breach the fence of the King of all kings. Right? We have to realize that God created us unbelievable. Right? Our eyes have lids, right? And they say that lids are because we could use our eyes for good and for bad. We could use our eyes to see the wonders of Hashem. We could see our eyes to do something positive, right? But we also, unfortunately, can use our eyes to look at bad things. So God says, close them, right? Our mouth could be used for good, for eating with blessings, right? For talking words of Torah like we're doing now. But our mouth could also be used for something bad. What did God do? God said, I'm putting a safeguard, but not only one safeguard, two safeguards, right? Your teeth. Yeah, there are some people that could talk with their teeth closed, right? Most of us, I don't think could, right? So that's one thing, but you can still make some kind of noise, right? But then if you go, you can't talk. You can't make words, right? If your lips are completely shut, right? You can make noise, but you can't formulate words. And says the Patriarch, God did that to remind us that we are putting down the gate. Right? You have nothing nice to say? I have gates in front of me, right? And this fence in front of me. Don't breach that fence. So every time we're ready to say something, look at your mouth and say, my lips are not there just for my beautiful lips or my beautiful teeth, right? My mouth and lips are there, right, to remind me that I have a fence that I cannot make a coherent word sound when they're closed. I can't formulate words when my teeth and mouth are closed. Most of us, 90% of us, right? And when we think about that and reflect on that, we say, you know what? Let's put that down. And that will be a reminder to hold our tongue, right? And more than just holding our tongue, it's closing the fences of our teeth and our lips. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's good to be back. Sorry about last week again. Baruch Hashem, I'm feeling better. And God willing, we'll have a lunch and learn soon. I'm putting that together. So probably the next one will be in Mandarin. So please pay attention to the flyers that are coming out. And please stay tuned for some exciting things coming out of Eitz Chaim. We're very excited to be looking at our programming for the next little while. So everybody have a great day. And if anybody wants